For those of you out in on Zoom, we will be getting started shortly, and hopefully tech will work. And if you have any questions, we'll be able to get your questions and get you some answers. So thank you. About 5 minutes.
How many people are on Zoom? One. Two.
Yeah, I wasn't going to open that one up, but they're all there.
I haven't spoken with her since I saw the building. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think I'm going to say yes. Oh, John had insurance. Yeah. So to me, someone said, if you get it, you get the shot, it's more like a bad case of cold. Yeah.
Just feel allowed. I don't think he was going to.
I have not seen the car.
Yeah. Said it was like
exactly. So it's Jerry's. Why do I find this so high?
They're all their own improvements.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Chris is born.
Yeah, that's right.
To me, it was. Is an office. You know, every time. I mean, probably going to try to spirit of 70. Yeah, you know. Was it married to Ryan?
That's
Yeah. So have you seen some insiders to what
Not inside, but
they look nice. And I like that little man cave, for lack of a better term, they got out
I
back
think
there.
that was built around.
All right, if I could have everyone's attention, I'd like to welcome you to this open forum that the town of Coventry is putting on in reference to the proposed solar development on top of the old landfill on Arnold Road. That landfill has been an issue for the town for a number of years. It's been in process to cap it, secure it. Where we're going with this, we're trying to bring this full circle around and now go from a hazardous material dump site to a clean energy production site. So that's what we're hoping to do here, as well as gain some revenue for the town. I'd like to thank two council members that are here today, Councilperson Hillary Lima and Councilperson Jamie LeBlanc, giving up their Saturdays to be here, so thank you very much. If you're out on Zoom, I appreciate it, and we will try to get any questions that you have. Hopefully it's going to work correctly. Hopefully you're hearing me. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just give you a quick little background, and then I'm going to introduce Russ Mayman. He is a representative from the company that is proposing to put the solar development on there, also looking for the lease from the town. But when we started this project to move from capping to what to do with the property, we looked at all the things that we could do there. And unfortunately, the only thing we can do there is a solar development project because of the fact of that cap that's on there has to be maintained. It cannot be penetrated. If it does, it defeats the purpose of it all. We are not solar experts in our town. So what we did was we hired a consulting company called Balance Rock Energy to work with us and work with potential vendors and go through the process. Balance Rock Energy is also the company that the school department hired to do their power purchase agreement, RFP, and work through there. The one thing that we found in this project when we began it is we couldn't really go out to an RFP to see and get all different vendors in. And the reason for that is the material that's used on that capping is only one company that's authorized to put something on top of it and not void the warranty. I mean, we're looking at a need for a 30-year warranty on this, and solar development is they're the only company that's authorized. So the problem that we had was working with our vendor to make sure that we got the biggest bang for our buck, and I think we've done that. I'd like to introduce Russ Mayman, the rep from Watershed Solar Development, and I will let him give you some background, and we'll also be available for any questions that you might have in reference to this. And we will try to get you out of here early. It is a beautiful Saturday, but we want to get everybody's questions answered. Russ? Are you going to roll the slides? Yeah, I will.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, as he mentioned, my name is Russ Mayman. I am the Business Development Manager for Watershed Solar Development. And as Ed said, we are seeking to lease the top deck of the Arnold Road landfill for a solar energy project. A little bit about Watershed Solar Development. It was specifically formed to develop solar projects on Watershed Geo's closure turf product. The closure turf product is a proprietary system that you have on your Arnold Road landfill. It is a non-permeable covering for the landfill, and that is critical. Watershed Geo guarantees that it will not, be permeated during the life of the landfill covering, and so they're very, very strict and particular about what happens on top of that landfill. So as such, landfills being a great spot to develop solar projects. They formed a company called Watershed Solar Development with a local Rhode Island developer, ISM Solar. So Watershed Solar Development is solely in the business of developing solar projects on the watershed geo closure turf all over the country. So, and as I mentioned, we are have a 50% joint venture partner, ISM Solar, who is here in Rhode Island, and they previously put solar on top of the Cranston landfill. So Ed, if you want to roll the slide, I think we have a picture of that one. So this is the Pontiac Ave Landfill. Just to familiarize yourself, if you don't know where it is, it's off Pontiac Ave behind the waste management facility. You can actually see this from 95 as you're heading south behind the water treatment facility. It too is a capped landfill with the geosynthetic closure turf product. And there's a 3.5 megawatt solar array up there. And as you can see, to affix the panels, if you will, in place, we do not penetrate the landfill. There's a ballasted system used. The racking is attached to these benches, if you will, of that take landscape blocking, and the weight keeps the system in place. And this is just one style of that ballasted racking. But it's good to get a good shot of it and what it looks like, the pitch of it. Because it's ballasted and weighted down, you might notice if you've seen other ground-mounted solar arrays in the area, the panels are not pitched up as much. The more you pitch the panels up, the more wind they get. So when you're using ballast, it's usually a 5, 10, or 15% pitch at the most. So you want to roll it, Sam? Some of the exclusive benefits that we bring to the project, and this is very important for the town, developing the solar project on top of your closure turf site, we will pay for and extend the warranty on the product. And that's key. No one else can do that. We have the assurance of the Watershed Geo team that they will be involved in the construction, and we have standard operating procedures for the entire process. So, okay, so when you develop a large-scale solar project like this, or any solar actually, there's 4 steps that you have to go through. You have to get site control, right? You have to have either own the site or get a lease agreement in place. You have to get the approval of the distribution company who owns the wires to interconnect to their system. And then you have to work with the local town on getting permitting. And last is you have to somehow monetize the power. So we have started the interconnection application process with National Grid, and we are all set to execute that. We've been talking to the town now, as you know. We have a path to permitting. We've met with the planner once already and know the path. And we are in the process of working on a contract for the power. So at this point, to move the project forward, we need to formalize the site lease with the town. Ed?
Actually, let me give you the new one.
Yeah. So this is a preliminary layout for the project. I say preliminary because just like any construction project, there are several iterations that the design goes through before you get to final engineering. However, we are fairly confident that we'll be right around the size that this project notes. It is just under or around 5 megawatts DC. That would produce 6 million kilowatt hours or so. It is only taking up the top deck of the landfill when not coming down any of the slopes. It utilizes just about all of the flat area up top. That green line in the middle is the existing roadway that is there. That was the difference between the slide that I just took off. But yeah, it'll be facing due south. For those of you not familiar with solar, you know, we're in the Northern Hemisphere, so the panels face south to get the best use of the sun. And this picture depicts a 15-degree pitch, 2 panels in portrait. We showed this because that's probably the worst case in terms of the pitch. Typically, landfills are pitched at 5 or 10 degrees. This one we're showing at 15. So, yep, that's the layout. And I guess at this point, if you want to open up any questions, it's probably the best time to ask questions with the layout up there.
Anyone have any questions they'd like to ask either myself, council, or from Russ in reference to this project?
Well, I'm just wondering, we own the property right there, 5 Granby, so it's the smaller building in the middle between the other two on Granby Street.
Down here.
That's the one. So we're just wondering, how specifically is this going to affect our property? Is it reflective at all?
Is it what?
Reflective?
No, so we will do a glare study if necessary.
Yeah.
Usually the glare studies are dictated depending on how close you are to an airport. So you have to, there's a software, a program you go online on the internet for the FAA site and you fill out your information. They tell you whether you have to do a glare study.
Yeah.
The glare is really minimal because of the pitch. It's pitching, 5 or 10 degrees is not very much.
I assume though, if we go to 15, it would be considerably more.
A little bit more. Right, a little bit more on the 15.
Yeah.
But if you would like, we will do a glare analysis.
I would just like to know, because otherwise we're generally supportive of the whole thing, but just, concerned that it could adversely affect our property. I'm also concerned about maybe runoff.
Yeah.
From this as well.
Somewhat.
The amount of runoff.
There is no runoff on this. That's already been contained in the plan when they cap this landfill.
Yeah.
There's retention ponds that are all there. None of what comes down off of this goes anywhere but into the retention ponds on the
Design
side.
though, it's going to be more runoff than there would with that astroturf material that you've got on there now.
No, it's going to be the same amount because the material that's on there now doesn't allow any water to penetrate through. So whatever is going to hit, whether there's panels on top or just a covering, it's the same amount of water that's going to come down the sides, and you can see off on the left-hand side, you can see those.
Probably a greater velocity than coming off something like solar panel as opposed to astroturf.
So the astroturf is not permeable. Any rain that hits it runs off.
Yeah,
So we're not changing that characteristic of the landfill.
that's the whole purpose of
What I'm saying is there won't be a change to the volume, but there would be a change to the velocity.
No.
I don't think so, no.
There shouldn't be. There shouldn't be at all. We've talked to the other side on the capping company as well. It won't be. It's going to be the same amount. And again, it's going to go into, if you look, you'll see there's a gully all the way around that property. That all goes down, it flows out into those retention ponds, multiple layers of retention ponds. The purpose is to not let water get into the ground. It's also not to let it get off site. So it all stays there, that's what's gonna happen. It will eventually but it's all filtered out. There's nothing, the cap is to prevent any kind of contamination to begin with. So it's just clean rainwater is all we're getting. That's all you continue to get.
The project,
We're also at a higher elevation than this is. So again, going back to the glare, I don't know how that affects the glare being higher.
it would only benefit it in terms of affecting anyone. It's up higher, so no one down low is going to be affected by the glare.
Yeah, we're up high.
Um,
Our elevation is higher than the top.
Yeah. So, there also is, I'm not sure if it's on this picture yet. So there is a decent amount of vegetation in there. There's trees, there's some trees in there. So there's already somewhat of a screen. But like I said, we're happy to do the glare study, and if it's an issue, add additional screening if it's needed.
Yeah, I'd just like to be aware of
Yep.
that,
Yep.
beforehand.
Yep.
Because like I said, otherwise, again, I think it's a good use of the area and stuff, but, I just also don't want, I think focused on our building and find out.
Sure.
All sorts of consequences we didn't know about beforehand.
Yep.
That's why we're doing what we're doing here, and what's going to continue on during this whole process. Complete transparency, so nobody has any misunderstanding on where we're going, what we're doing, and if there's some issues, they will be dealt with, or it doesn't move forward. I mean, that's the whole point of it all. We're here to make sure it works correctly, and it benefits the town and benefits the residents.
Right.
How long has it been in the works?
How long has it been in the works?
Yeah.
So, Ed, you can probably speak better to that. I know right from the get-go, when they designed the synthetic turf, it was that hopeful that we'd someday host a solar array to make some money on it.
This is the first I heard of it this morning on the news.
But we weren't ready to do anything with it we got done with the capping. The capping actually was completed about a year and a half
Yeah.
earlier than was anticipated. So that's why we started moving forward. Once that happened, you couldn't do anything until that capping was done. All inspected, all turned over back, and at the point where we're at, once it got to that point, that's when we started moving forward. As I said, this thing is a year and a half earlier than it was supposed to be, and because of the program, the way we did it, the town did it, there's been no cost to the town in reference to doing all of the capping, because we use the blood material. In fact, that whole program generated additional revenue. So there's a 30-year operations and maintenance of this whole project that has to be done under DEM and federal regulation. That money is already sitting in the accounts to cover all of those costs as well. Typically, this solar project would have been needed to cover the cost of that O&M, but because of what we've done, this is going to actually, this revenue will go into the town's coffers and help to reduce tax rates. If it's so chosen to be used that way, that'll be up to council. But it's somewhere in the ballpark, it'll be close to about $100,000, give or take, annually with an escalator annually on that. But that's what we're looking at, that's going to the town, not going to the O&M, so.
And there'll be tangible taxes as well, too.
Right, tangible taxes as well.
Who's gonna benefit from all the solar power coming from you? Where's that gonna go?
I didn't hear that, was that?
So who's going to buy the solar power?
Yeah, so there's several avenues for that, right? In the state of Rhode Island, it's a little complicated, but there are some very advantageous net metering credit laws in Rhode Island, and what that means, net metering credit. So if you have a project like this where there is no electric load connected to it, just making power, the state of Rhode Island has passed a law, like other states, where you can take the credit that project earns, right? National Grid values the power and they give the system owner a credit. There's several different entities who can buy those credits. Municipalities, I believe the town has already done that with the school system. State and federal government offices can take the power, nonprofits, hospitals, and public and private educational institutions. So when you see these solar projects that aren't connected to any electric load, someone is buying the credits that they produce. And so in full disclosure, the state of Rhode Island has put out an RFP for their net metering credits. And you think of the state of Rhode Island, they have many, many facilities, corrections, the DOA, couple of colleges. They have over 100 million kilowatt hours that they're looking for net metering credits. So we have submitted into that RFP, which came out a couple of months ago, and we are in phase 2 of their proposals, evaluation. And we feel pretty confident that they'll buy the net metering credits from this project because of, they're trying to drive solar to gravel pits, brownfields, and landfills. So they like this project.
The state had a program, virtual net metering.
Yep, yeah.
And they had 30 megawatts.
Community solar.
Set aside for residents could actually buy and get credits off of a community-wide project like this. Unfortunately, it was only 30 megawatts that was allowed. That capacity has been used up. My hope is that we were going to be able to use this and do that in our town to be able to save all the residents a little bit of money on your electric bills every month. Unfortunately, that 30 megawatts is gone. They have not added to that. They're not planning on adding that in the near future. If they did, it would be too late after what we were hoping. But so if anybody hears about that program, we tried, but that program is still up, and that's why we couldn't do it for the residents. We wanted to put this back in the town and actually give these guys something back. And unfortunately, we couldn't. So the only way is to sell it and get the least money coming in to help offset the tax a little bit on this.
Which direction is the panel going to be facing?
Straight down.
Straight down.
That diagram is oriented north-south. So yeah, straight down.
Can you just point out what those buildings are in the very south, like facing right there? Is it Home Depot, Walmart, BJ's?
But actually, that first parking lot should be part of the hotel that's down there.
It's BJ's to the right, Hampton into the.
That's PJ's, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I know there's actually a gate here for the site. And so this would be, is that the hotel?
Yes.
Yeah. So they'll be facing straight down that way, mostly to the Commerce Mall.
we own the property that directly abuts the site, and I have a question, will the town be meeting all the regulations of the solar power generators that they have established in the zoning?
Oh, yeah, they still gonna go through zoning.
Yes.
And get the rules just like anybody
You have
else.
no special use permit?
No, I think we're exempt from a special use
Special
permit.
use they don't need because it is a town solar and that's in there. But everything else, they gotta abide by, they gotta go through the zoning process, all of that.
Major land development.
In fact, our zoning planning officer was here today, Russ.
Yeah, the way this is gonna work, they're gonna have 2 public hearings with the town. So, you know, and you will all get noticed if you live within the area, so, you'll be able to ask many more questions on this project. There'll be 2 more public hearings, I'm sure, that, as this project proceeds. Like Ed said, normally solar facilities need special use permits, but because this is being put on town property, they don't need to go before the zoning board for a special use permit. They'll just be going to the planning board for the 2 public hearings will be at the master plan stage and the preliminary stage. So,
And I mean, we know that the height was already increased to generate additional revenue to cover the cost of this, and now the solar's gonna add additional.
No, we never did go higher than that.
No,
We when we finalized, so it was thought at one point to go an extra 5 feet up. But that didn't happen. We never put this back up, we never put up 5 feet.
But the original notification that we received was 2 to 3 feet of clean material, and it was gonna be capped. And then the next thing, it was a lot higher.
That was the original plan, if I'm not mistaken, that included the extraction of all of that material that was in the ground, and that was going to be multi-millions of dollars, as this still was, but it was gonna be substantially more, and it would have all been on the town, 60% of that cost would have been on the town. By going and switching over to the format that they did, it helped in capping it. And you have to go X height for the capping to make sure that nothing gets through, and this, again, all regulations that I'm not that familiar with. But that's why we saw the change from that couple of feet, that was extracting all the material, transporting it. At that point, it would have been a massive cost to our town, because like I said, there's several other parties, responsible parties, they've got 40% of the cost, the town has 60% of the cost. So with this, there was no additional cost to the town. With that, it would have been millions upon millions of dollars to the town. So this project saved the town untold debt that we'd be paying for the next 20 years.
I mean, one of the things that I noticed in the regs was it says that the solar installations will not exceed 12 feet of the original grade. And I know from talking to the engineers, because it was next to us, the original grade was already increased 17 and a half feet. Now we're even going higher. I mean, this is clearly visible from our property, and it's actually above.
Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, that would include any additions that they, solar company has to put on. That's not being done by the solar company.
Right.
That was done by the capping to preserve and cap the land. So the starting elevation is where it is now. So they can't go above that. They can't go above that. That's a little rest.
Not from the original grade of the property.
That's the original grade, because, again, that original grade has nothing to do with the solar project, that was the capping piece.
And is there any bond or insurance if this thing is permeated during construction? Will the butters be covered? If this cover is permeated during construction or decommissioning?
That's all on our company to make sure it doesn't happen.
And will there be a bond or insurance that covers?
There's not a bond, but we have insurance as a company. Yeah,
there'll be a decommissioning bond.
right, that's different subject.
Decommissioning cleans it up, suppose it's permeated during decommissioning.
No, that's why.
Their insurance is gonna
They're
go.
fully responsible, and because it's authorized by.
Watershed,
vendor,
yeah.
They would work together if it was, that's why we're going this route, to make sure it doesn't happen. And they've done this all over, have you had any incidents? No.
So interesting enough, though, it talked about the benefits of working with us and the pre-construction meeting. When we installed the Cranston site, we walked that with a fine-tooth comb, literally. There were 3 representatives from Watershed Geo. There were representatives from the PRP group on computers, and we walked the entire site. And they did find actually an area where there was a little bit of a washout of the sand infill, so that got replaced and fixed before they ever started the solar project. So same thing will happen here. That whole dock deck will get a whole, once over to make sure it's in good, clean condition before we go forward.
And when you guys hold those down on blocks, is there a wind rating that those are acceptable to?
So yeah, it's a whole engineering exercise. That's why I said that's a preliminary. You know, you have to take into consideration where you are, proximity to the ocean in terms of your wind rating. They have classifications, and then the height of the panels and the length of the runs of array. So it's a whole, you know, mathematical equation. But yeah, they'll put the proper ballast down to keep it in place.
Construction too, so we know we have to deal with the wind rating.
Yeah.
Construction, making sure it's fastened to the ground.
Right. I think it's 140 or 150 in this area.
I'll give you an example. We've got solar panels on the building right now on the top. It covers about a third of the building. And they have the same style with the ballast on top. They don't penetrate. We've never, they've been up there 10, 12 years, 10 years, and that wall block. There's never been an issue. They've never lifted, even with all the storms we've had. They're up there wide open as well. And we've had no issue with that. They've never come off. Because they do their engineering, that thing's not going anywhere.
Is there a life expectancy on these panels?
Yeah, so the panels are warranted for 35 years, right? So, 25 years, excuse me, and the warranties are going up. I've been in solar for 10 years, 11 years now. And when I first started, the warranties were 15 years. And they've been going up since then because if you think about it, this is fairly a new industry. The more experience they're having, they're realizing that they can offer longer and longer warranties. When you plug a solar panel in and it's producing power, there's really not much that can go wrong in its afterlife, right? I mean, if it's producing power on day one, it's probably going to produce power forever. So we do have a degradation factor in the industry. They'll produce the most power during that first year, and then they'll slowly degrade a little bit, but they'll settle in around 80% of what they're rated throughout almost their entire life.
So when their life expectancy is gone, what are they gonna do with all these panels that they're putting up? What are they gonna, there's gotta be hazardous materials in there. Who's gonna, you know, where's the money gonna come from?
There's a decommissioning bond that they have to put down as part of the project to cover the cost of taking all this down. And if they fail to do it, the town has the money in that bond to do it. If they do it themselves, which they will, or should, then they'll get their money back. So they don't want it, but either way, the money's gonna come from the company to cover that decommission. We get that bond before this project goes forward, that money is sitting in the bank account, and it's just waiting, and if needed, when it comes to that, you know, if they fail to do the due diligence on taking it down.
But from a more functional, you know, perspective, the decommissioning is like worst case scenario, right? If 25 years go by and whoever owns it at that time, you know, is gone or whatever, the town has money to take it down. They're warranted for 25 years. They will honestly produce power forever. They just keep producing power. You know, these are same technologies on satellites and whatnot. They don't replace them. The 25-year thing comes in for a couple of reasons. It's the warranty on the panel. And then, you know, a solar project is unique in the power generating world. You know, if you have a gas or a coal-fired power generator, you have ongoing expenses, fuel, maintenance. There's none of that with a solar project. It's all paid up front, right? Everything is done up front. The owner of the solar project needs that 25-year PPA to recoup his money. I don't have a crystal ball, but if you think about 25 years from now, we're probably going to be using electricity. There's probably going to be a need for power. And I am pretty sure that someone would want to buy the power in 25 years from these systems. But right now, it's a 25-year window that we're working with.
Russ, do you have an estimate on the total amount of investment you're gonna make with this fall? Are we talking multi-millions?
Oh, yeah. I would say it's going to cost about somewhere in the area of $10 million.
10 million.
10 million. Maybe a little less. And you know, I'm not trying to be, you know, vague, but certain parts of the industry are subject to market conditions. You know, panels go up and down in costs with tariffs and whatnot. It's a little bit of a political mess, unfortunately. So panel prices can range. But yeah, in that range of $9 to $10 million.
Once you get all the approvals and everything, you actually start construction, how long will it take?
Yeah, so this is actually the longest part. The construction is actually very simple. It's not very long at all. It'll probably take 3 to 4 months tops. And the actual, you know, men on the landfill hooking together pieces is very quick. Some of that delay, we have to wait for National Grid. Getting into their work queue is exceptionally difficult. You know, they're gonna have to come out and do their part. If you can see at the top of the diagram, way up by Arnold Road, There'll be what's called our equipment pad. You know, all the power will come down to inverters and combiners, which will put all the power together, and there'll be a transformer there. It'll be a pad, maybe 10 by 12 feet to hold the equipment. And then off of that will be a series of poles. The site will have 3 poles of their own. And then when the power goes across to National Grid would have 4 poles. So getting National Grid to come out to put their poles and interconnect, they have a very, very long lead time on getting that done. So, however, once we start this process, we get the permitting in place and we know we're good to go, we'll start to put our work order in right away with National Grid, so there's no delay.
Will any of this be impacted with the sale of National Grid to Pennsylvania?
No. So that's a very good question, actually, though. So without getting too deep into the weeds, you know, National Grid is a utility, and they are regulated by the Public Utility Commission in Rhode Island, just like every other state. So being a utility, there are things they have to do, and the legislature gets involved. So I mentioned net metering credit laws in Rhode Island. Those are laws. They have to be followed by whoever buys National Grid, or, you know, whoever the utility is.
Anyone else?
Were you the lowest bidder? Were you the lowest bidder?
Well, no, so there was not an RFP process. That was what Ed was referring to. We're the only ones who can build on the watershed geo product, the closure turf product. If anyone else was to come and install on that, it would void the warranty. And because of the nature of the landfill, the town can't take that risk.
That's why we engage the services of consulting Balanced Rock to make sure and to negotiate with Watershed and make sure that we were getting the best deal based on the industry average, the standard on what the community is getting for the production, and it's based on the kilowatt, the PC kilowatt, on how they calculate the value. And originally, the original offer was 15 a kilowatt, and we worked up to 18 a kilowatt over that, which is in line with what I'm seeing on the others. But we've also got, I've asked Russ to give me a couple of some numbers from other communities that have done this, so we'll have a comparative with them to see exactly where we are. And that's what Balanced Rock did, and they were quite satisfied with the numbers we got. They were instrumental in getting it up to the 18. As I said, it's the same company that the schools use to do their RFP for the power purchase agreement. So they've got a lot of experience. They're very good at what they do, and that's why we contacted them, because honestly, I didn't know squat about solar energy before we started this project. So that's why we know what we've done to make sure that we're giving the town the best bang for its buck.
What are the height of those panels gonna be? When you said you're gonna have them tip 15 degrees, so from the landfill that's right now, you know, what do you, how another 8 feet, 10 feet?
No. It would probably be, I'm gonna assume it would be in the 4 or 5 foot range, maybe. And the reason I'm not sure is, so again, I talked about, you know, there's a lot of variabilities in the industry right now. When this is built sometime in the late spring next year, hopefully, you know, I'm not sure what might be available for racking. So a racking system that we put in here maybe might not be available. So the height might change on the ballasted racking, but it won't be any more than 4 or 5 feet high. And if it's the kind like you saw on the Cranston site where it's only 1 in landscaping, that's only 2 or 3 feet off the ground.
How many panels do you expect to have?
It's on there. Boy, I don't know. This is kind of fuzzy there. There's module information. 10,300, I think it says. See module information? 1, 2, 3, 4th line.
10,000.
This is 10,000 panels?
10,300, 10,800. One deal.
What's the acres on that site? How many acres are on that site?
I think it's 17. Is it
The
17?
whole project is about 17 acres.
Yeah.
What is the panel number?
Just the top.
Yeah, just the flat.
It's like acre and miles.
Acre wise,
I don't know.
I don't have the, I'll be honest, I don't have that. I want to say it's somewhere, it's probably somewhere around 15 acres on
Yeah.
the top of it.
Yeah.
That's going to take about 17, because it's not going to get everything on the edges.
Right.
But it's probably going to be about 15. But the project itself, that whole area is, I want to say it's 40 some acres, 50 acres.
And we do know that solar, without too much change in topography, takes up about 3 acres per megawatt. So 3 times the 5 is 15. That's probably a good estimation of what the total acreage is. In the back?
Is there any electronic noise associated with these, like a hum or a buzz?
Yeah, so no, the panels themselves don't hum. And as I mentioned, so just to get a little background on solar. Solar makes DC, direct current power, has to be switched over through an inverter to alternating current. The inverter makes a slight noise when it kicks on, maybe like your dishwasher at the most. And then down on that equipment pad, as I mentioned, is a transformer. And the transformer has a slight hum, but it's nothing out of the ordinary.
Where will those be located? Where will that be located?
Yeah, so that's all gonna be up at the top. It doesn't show up in this diagram, but right there.
Over there?
Yeah, right there, the entrance of the landfill. And again, I mentioned it earlier, it'd be like probably like a 12 by 20.
I call the entrance to the landfill more at the top corner.
What's that?
Is that correct? I call the entrance to the landfill more at the top corner.
Yeah, okay. Right,
Not there.
right there, up to the entrance.
Where you see all those black lines converging from the boxes, that's the entrance area right there.
The blue lines parallel to the blue line.
Yes.
Because if I was to drive into that property right now, I'd be at the top of your elevation.
Yes,
Where the gate is now?
yeah.
Right, it's gonna be in that area right there.
So that's up there.
As part of this project also, they are going to be installing a new security fence around the entire property.
I'm sorry, my mistake. You know what it is? Your shadow is pointing to the right place.
I need one of those little laser
Finger is
things.
pointing down there.
I'm sorry. Need a laser pointer.
My mistake, yeah.
I forgot that. As part of this project, they're also going to be replacing the entire fence around this whole property. So it'll be a high security fence or security fence.
Whatever the zoning calls for, Russ, is it 7 feet?
It is.
Yeah, 7-foot chain link fence.
Will they do a landscaping around it? I mean, something to dress it up?
It's up so up high, there's really nothing to dress up. If there's an area that requires screening, we will certainly, do what's required, but, the area is elevated some, how high? I don't even know how high the elevation is off the Arnold Road. Yeah, 30 feet or so. So you're not gonna really see them that much from Arnold, and I can't plant anything on the landfill, so.
You do see it coming down, come down from New London Turnpike and down, you can see the top, you can see a small section of the top. That thing is actually, it's a massive complex up there. Hillary, you've been on top of that, right, Jamie? Both of you guys, it's unbelievable when you get up there. The pictures don't do justice to the amount of massive size of that flat area up there.
You do see it though with Grandview. You do see it with Grandview.
Yes, you do. You do, because that grand view is slightly above it.
Yeah.
You will see it through the back pot, on the parking lots, or more DJs, push the back pot over there. Actually, from Arnold Road coming up, you don't see it.
No, you don't.
Just coming down, you'll see it in that small section.
Speaking of the 32 feet of height, has the town or anyone done a wind study at all? Because I am in the property right across from that, and the prevailing wind is coming my way, and it's pretty heavy, and it's gonna lick my roof.
So the wind,
So I want to know either from Ross or someone, if anyone did a wind study by raising that mound to that height.
that wouldn't be part of my, yep.
It's not you, it's the town.
Yeah. I don't,
I cannot give that answer if you give me your name and address.
Sure.
I will find out for you. I don't believe they did, they made a PEM, they required it. If, you got
I don't have it, but it's Cal Chemical.
Richard, is your thought that the wind characteristics have changed because of the height of the landfill?
That's part one. and
Okay.
then because we're going to increase the height again with the panels, I don't know how that will distribute the wind or whatever. So all I know is that from that height, I have much more wind coming across the top of my building. So it's something that's probably has the town and then added on your panels, Russ. I don't know whether to chop the wind up or if it'll improve the wind or make it worse.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
There's an issue on my building, I can tell you that right
Yeah,
now.
I can find out. I mean, I honestly don't know, but Yeah, I know Watershed Geo has done a lot of wind tunnel testing because they're experimenting with they have a project called Power Cap, which requires no ballast and the panels lay flat. We're not installing them here because where we are in the Northeast, you know, those are mostly for Southern type applications, but they put those through an enormous amount of wind tunnel testing, and I'll see if they might have something on the traditional style.
Do you do your own glare analysis for your own projects, or do you use someone who's third party?
We would use a third party, and there's an FAA site that we can go to do that.
Okay.
We don't do it as a matter of course, it's only if it's required.
The other thing is, some people were curious, I know they're facing south, but if anyone's driving down on the road, it would be glared out
Yeah.
at certain points of the day.
Yeah.
Specifically, going that way.
So again, the panels are pointing straight down the bottom of this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And all the road's coming up this way, so you're really not coming into the glare. The glare is mostly going to be headed down to the Commerce Park. And I didn't mention this, but solar panels are constructed using an anti-glare coating as much as possible, but still it's glass and they go through the whole glare analysis, but it is an anti-glare coating. The idea is, you know, it's solar energy. They try to trap as much of the sun's rays as possible. So the coating on the glass is specially formulated to do that.
You said there were gonna be more meetings on this. How is it gonna be advertised? I never heard about this till this morning. Yeah.
They're gonna be in the newspaper.
Sorry?
The ads will be in the they'll be in the newspaper,
What paper?
and they'll be in the Times, Kent County Times.
I don't get that.
Okay, they'll also be posted on the town's website, and if you live, I don't know how far away from this property you live.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
How far?
About 15 miles.
Oh, so, okay, so you wouldn't get noticed, but anybody, like the gentleman over there who lives on Grandview, he would get a registered letter in the mail notifying him of the date and time of public hearings.
Speaking of that, did anybody here get a copy of that flyer I sent out? Did I put it out to? All right, good. You both know. Excellent. I sent that out 2,500-foot radius in the property. So I tried to way beyond what we will be required to do once we do the formal meetings. I wanted to try and bring as many people into this meeting as possible. The council was very insistent that we try to be as transparent as possible with this, and I agree. That's why we've done what we've done. So I'm thankful. Thank you, that's Andy. I appreciate it.
If I could just follow up on that, for this woman's question, just out of curiosity, we want to know how the public wants to best be communicated with. How would you prefer to be notified of something like this? Like, what's the best way for you?
Well, you might put a sign on the town bulletin board, as you got now 117, that would be good, or a community building over there.
Okay.
The news media is okay, but they never said where it was, they just said there was a meeting this morning at 10.
They said
Four times on Channel 12, on Channel 10, they posted it. And each time they said town hall or someone else, no.
Yeah.
Yes, not the hall. And it says right in the flyer, they showed a picture of the flyer, so that the parent could read the rest of it.
You could put it out with each town council member who has district in the town, right?
Yeah, what do you mean by
I
that?
think Dickinson is the House representative. So she got it, she could email it.
You have the internet?
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact that Councilwoman Dixon posted this on her Facebook page.
Okay.
She posted it, so I mean, I know, in fact, I'm pretty sure almost every council member posted it on.
I went
as
on the
well.
radio too, 105.5. But
So I mean.
I was just curious, I want to know what people prefer and how they like to get their information.
I looked on the town's website. I didn't see it.
Should have been.
It's right there on the front page.
It's right on the news, I put it right on the news section.
And it's on the town's Facebook page as well.
I saw it, yes.
There, it was on our Facebook as well as our website.
And this form actually isn't required. It was during a presentation that I had recommended that we try to have a forum where taxpayers and butters could come and voice either for this, against this, or if they had questions, they could get them answered.
Can this presentation be put on the town's website?
There will be a link to it because I'm recording this whole thing, so it will be out there. It will be on our YouTube page. We'll try and get it up there over the weekend. But it will be on my YouTube page and anybody will be able to watch it. I'm also going to check and see if anybody on Zoom that's watching, if you have a question you'd like to ask, we're going to attempt to see if this is going to work today. Please raise your hand and I will bring you into the meeting to ask your question.
And while you're waiting, Ed, I just want to say too, this, it's important what just said is understood. There's a formal process in every town. It's required by law to notify people, and there's a whole process. This is outside of that process. You're being notified here in this meeting is not actually required. So, I was very happy that your town, wanted to be as open as they were, but there is a formal process that takes place once we get through that, into that permitting process.
Could you speak to the number of projects your company has done the last 2 or 3 years, and then maybe also if there's a consistent maybe complaint by butters in those projects? Maybe there's not, but maybe you could speak to how many you do and what those complaints are.
Yeah, so ISM Solar has over 88 megawatts of projects under development or in construction. We were the first developer to build a community solar project that Ed referred to up in Burrillville, Rhode Island. We develop projects in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Maine. We have a 47 megawatt portfolio in Maine, which consists of, I think, 6 or 7 projects. So yeah, we're basically a New England level developer. As far as the abutters go, most of the abutter complaints are at this process in the beginning, You're fortunate that this is a landfill. It's not a forested area. A lot of solar projects are being developed in areas that have, trees and are green. And that brings a lot of the abutters out that don't want to see the trees come down. That's not an issue here. That's really the biggest complaint that we have. During the life of the array, honestly, I'm not being vague here. I don't recall any issues. So I mentioned inverters, right? So the technology improves. In the industry, we've gone to what's called string inverters. They used to have central inverters. So rather than having, this project might have probably 25 to 28 good suitcase size, maybe a little bigger size inverters that'll be on a rack. When I first got in the industry, a project of this size would have 1 or 2 central inverters, which were huge. They were, size of the back of a tractor trailer. Those had noise issues, and there was a project early on in my career where we had to actually enclose that for the noise issue. But again, that's been resolved through technology. Other than that, I can't think of any abutter issues during the lifetime, other than things like the fence, if there's issues with fence, kids breaking in, that kind of thing.
My last question would be, if there is a glare issue, would you have anything to put in between the project and those abutters that are having that problem, and have you had to do something about any of the projects you just discussed?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the topography of the layout and the site. This again being raised, I know when you get down towards the Commerce Park, it gets more level, but in order to put something up to screen the project would be very difficult from just the topography of this.
My biggest concern is that brand new.
Yes, these folks here,
Yeah.
they're gonna be sitting in the living room.
Yeah.
That's
the biggest
something.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know what you might have planned just in case that is an issue.
So again, it will depend on the pitch, what the settle in on what the pitch of the panels will be. A 5 or a 10 degree isn't going to give much glare, but that will come out in the glare study. If it is an issue, we can talk about screening on that side of the project. Yeah.
Thank you, Russ.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have several actually, but I don't have time right now. When you showed the Cranston one, I noticed that they had, I think, a tower and a wind turbine. Is that one also going to have that?
Ed, can you scroll back a few slides? Yeah.
Are you looking at this one, ma'am? Yeah,
That's just a stock picture. That's not our Cranston site. That's just a picture showing, utility poles and wind and solar.
That's the Cranston site.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that doesn't have that.
No.
This one won't.
No. And again, just if I can, while this is up, you can see the difference in the pitch, right? That's not that high. That's maybe 2.5, 3 feet on the back edge, less than 2 feet on the front edge. So they're not raised that high, but it's only one panel. If you double up the panels, now you're getting a little higher. And there are racking systems out there that will allow you to do 2 in landscape or 2 in portrait, so.
Should I ask all my questions now?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm Jean McCann, Harrington Road. I'm off Arnold.
You need to put that mic up, okay?
Okay, can you hear me now?
I think it's a good one.
Okay, that's better. And I'm sorry, I was late in research. I was doing this morning, so my questions might be all over the place. Let me see. And what's the cost for renewable energy to connect to the grid? So who pays for that? I'm more concerned as a taxpayer.
The town and the taxpayer don't pay for any of that. If you remember, I showed a slide that had 4 things that we do. One of them's interconnection.
Okay.
It's on the project to go through that process with National Grid. They come back with an entire plan of how you're going to interconnect, and it's quite complicated from an electrical and utility standpoint, and that bill is on us.
Okay, I think you may have answered this question earlier, but I didn't put them in any order and I didn't check them. So the power that we get from this, who decides what they do with that energy from the town?
So the project owner will decide who they sell that to. As a town, all you're doing is leasing the site.
Okay, that's my next question. So the town is getting money for this lease.
Right.
What happens to that money that they get? Where does that go?
That goes into the coffers, and the town council will decide how it's utilized, and it's utilized as part of my general operating budget, and used to reduce taxes by a small amount. There will also be, not only will there be the lease fee on this, there's also going to be the fee. It's 5,000 a megawatt in tax by state law.
So the tax, 5,000 per megawatt AC. So it's 4 on the AC side. I think it's 4 on the AC.
We'll another $20,000
Right.
from there that will also go towards the town, and that will just go into the tax collection on that.
And that always what?
That would be part of the basic tax collection. That would be under the tangibles.
Like any other business.
Our regular tax collection. So you'll see that.
Okay, so it's not tangible, or is it?
No, it's not going to be tangible. It's a state mandate that's how they determine on how a community can tax solar and wind projects.
The state.
Tax, they pay a.
Yeah, the state just wanted to formalize and standardize the rate. So it wasn't, one town was charging an enormous rate, and another one's not charging much to drive the, develop that kind of thing. So they set a statewide rate on the tangible tax for solar projects.
So National Grid doesn't have anything to do with who gets this power?
No. National Grid's role is just to deliver it.
Will there be an extra fee on our electric bill from National Grid?
There already is. But if you look at your electric bill,
On my bill, I don't know.
if you look at your electric bill, there's a lot of little line items. There's one called renewable energy charge, and it's some fraction of a penny per kilowatt hour. That goes in to fund these kind of programs.
Okay, so will ours go up?
No.
There won't be a separate charge
Yeah.
for the residents of town for the fund.
None of that is project specific. That's, a statewide budgeted number that they use to develop
How
solar.
often are inspections done on this?
So there'll probably be 2 times per year. There's an O&M, operations and maintenance program that will be put together on this. Yes, yeah. And in full disclosure, there's third parties that do this. So there'll probably be a third party, electric maintenance company that will come out, and it's basically like a checkup at the doctor. They'll check everything up, make sure it's all working correctly.
And there is one other add-on to that. They have their own O&M on their piece. There is an O&M that takes place on the entire
Turf.
landfill.
Yeah.
And that's out there multiple times a year, checking the wells, and checking all of the stuff that's on top of that. So that's part of the $100,000 a year in cost that the town has, the PRP group has, to maintain that site. That's separate part of what the solar piece is going to do. So that goes on as well. So they'll be up there multiple times a year. If they see anything during that they haven't bought, they get notified of that or something.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did you tell me how much the lease, how long is the lease for, number one?
We haven't finalized, we have not finalized the lease yet. This is before the council was willing to move forward, they requested that we do this. That's why we're doing this, and then I'm hoping to get a formal agreement to move forward only, and then we will negotiate the lease and finalize all that.
Okay, so you don't have a dollar amount on how much that would.
We have a dollar amount per DC kilowatt right now. Like as I said earlier, we started at 15, we're up to 18. It's effectively a 5 DC kilowatt project.
It's about 90,000.
We're looking at about $95,000 a year in lease fees with a
1.5%.
1.5% increase annually on that. And then on top of that, like some 20,000 that we'll be receiving for the tax on the clean energy, 20,000. So effectively, this project will generate first year $115,000 for the town. And it costs the town nothing for any of this. We were looking at needing to do a new fence. That was going to have to come out of the PRP group. They worked a deal. If this goes through, they will split that. So again, saving the town some additional funds on that. This is a 30 years on operation and maintenance on this landfill to begin with. That has to take place. So this sitting on top is just sitting on top of something that can't be used for anything else. There is nothing at all this property can be used for other than this solar and only with this one company. So we're kind of limited what we can do with it.
Now, what if there's a fire? What if there's a fire?
We'll work with the department on access and whatnot, but in all honesty, there's very little combustible materials in there.
Which leads me to another question, which I don't know who could answer this. Maybe you. I noticed that I read somewhere where the fire district, one of them, and I don't know which one, was looking for, I think, an increase in our fire taxes to help with the lighting fee.
That's anything fire. It has nothing to do with the town. Each and every one of those districts are separate entities on themselves and their own taxing authority.
Right.
And the town actually has nothing to do with any of that.
Okay, so any of this energy could not be used for lighting. Is that correct?
Well, my understanding is what they're doing, what they want to do, they want to replace the lights with gold LED. So that 400,000 that I read, well, that's all I know is what I read the table like you did. That it was going to be used to replace the old incandescent lights with LED lights. And that's from what we did before. And allegedly it's going to save $100,000 a year in electric costs throughout the district. But that's all I know about based on what I read.
Let me see if I have anything else. Just give me a second. Okay, I know that and I just, like I said, I apologize because I didn't.
No worries.
It was just this morning. I read something where the governor recently vetoed a renewable energy bill, that if it was signed, it would have cost the state over $54 million. How much, if anything, is this going to cost the Coventry taxpayers?
Yeah, it won't cost anything. It won't cost a thing, nothing.
So we don't have to worry about any fees anywhere hidden.
This is simply a straight lease.
Yep.
We're leasing the land to them, they're gonna run the project, they're gonna open for a plane, they're gonna do all that, they're gonna do the construction.
Right.
They're gonna do the interconnect, everything is on them, we are simply doing the land lease to them on property that we can't obviously do anything else on, but this type of project.
Right.
Yeah, there's no cost for the town, this actually truly is a money maker for the town, with no cost.
And would the lease be 25 years? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so typically they're 25 with a couple of 5-year options on them. And as I explained earlier, this is kind of how solar projects work, right? All the money is spent up front, and the owner of the project knows that he has a power purchase agreement, a PPA, with some off-taker to pay over 25 years, and eventually they get to a break-even point and they make some money. But it's a long-term contract.
Sir?
Yeah, this is, as far as the maintenance, you were saying where you take care of everything, but I don't know who you are, I'm sorry.
My name's Ed Morzinger. I'm the administrative officer. I was the interim town manager for about 3 years in the town before Mr. Marchand came in. So I was involved in this project for.
You were saying about how the town of Coventry is still taking care of as far as the banking.
As far as what, sir?
As far as the banking goes, that's up on the landfill.
Yes.
So, right now, it looks like it's all like gravel road work in there. Like, is there gonna be any kind of upgrading with that? And who pays for it? And what about, because if the town of Coventry is still going in there, are they maintaining all the roads?
The roads that are in there, they're not gonna be upgraded, they're not gonna be asphalted. There's no need to do any of that. Plowing, we don't plow it. There's nothing, during the winter time, there's no need to go up and around.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So there's no.
No, and if they're going up there to do an inspection, they usually just wait until the snow subsides a bit. In the last couple of years since this has been done, we really haven't had much snow to be an issue. But yeah, no, we don't do anything in there maintaining. We do have a small piece of storage area that our DPW has got some materials that they're storing on there that may or may not be left there. We're still looking to get them on the site to be able to do that. But no, the site sits there. One of my biggest concerns with this site is the fence that's up there right now that surrounds this entire site. This thing, the security on it is less than what I feel is adequate. It was a construction fence that was put up.
Yeah, it's still that temporary.
That's all going to be replaced ASAP. So that's what I'm looking forward to that. Again, that's not coming from the town. That's coming from the funds that are in that, in what remains on the budget. The Bud's money.
The PRP group, right?
Please?
The PRP group.
The PRP group will be paying part of it, and Russ's company will be paying part of it.
Yeah.
We're joint to put the new fence up around it. But that money there, fortunately, on that O&M for the next 30 years, as I said, is sitting there. It's already there, so it's not coming out of the town office. And so one of the things I'm real happy about is the way that project came involved and the changes that took place on that saved this town literally millions of dollars in debt that we would have been. So that project was worked out. And this is just, to me, this is full circle. We're bringing it around. We went from a hazardous waste dump to a place generating clean electric energy for, not necessarily for each and every one of you, but it's going out into the system that is utilized. So I'm real happy with, we've come full circle on this site. And maintaining itself cost-wise and generating money. So it's a win-win for us.
Yeah, as far as the fence goes, the PRP group knows the fence is inadequate right now, but they also know the solar project is eventually coming, and solar projects by not only town ordinance, but also the electric code have to have a fence around them. It's a much, to fix the fence that's there is a bigger area than I'd be responsible for, but rather than, we just decided with the PRP group that we're just going to split it 50-50, so.
We got some numbers on the fencing. It was almost $100,000
Yeah.
for the fence, so it's not a cheap project to put that fence up. What's going to go around there? So, again, there's one added little benefit that's going to save us some money on that side, less money coming out of that fund.
Would you anticipate when the next public hearing will be?
Next public hearing, Ed?
Next
Do you
year.
have a sense for when the next public hearing will be?
We've got to get through this. If the council approves this and we move forward, we sign a contract, then Russ, what would the timeframe be? That would be an area that are we talking 3 months, 2 months, 4 months?
It's all gonna fall on Russ, how quickly he can get the stuff. Is there gonna be a public hearing at the council level when they go,
So let me just be
when
clear.
the council, I'm sorry.
When Ed says you approve this, I believe if anything that's approved to start, it's a letter of intent stating that you'd like to move to the next step for potentially.
Correct. And we need to get that ASAP because there are some time constraints on that. By having this meeting, you push that time frame up a little bit that we need to get it done. So I do need to get it. I spoke to Russ this morning in reference to that. We've got a meeting scheduled on the 23rd of this month, and that would be sufficient time for the council to authorize signing of the letter of agreement.
What are the details that so has to be expedited?
Russ?
So that relates back to the interconnection process. So Ed, knowing this project was coming and knowing I'm on the site, knowing the numerous delays in the interconnection process, it can take over 2 years to develop one of these projects. And so Ed and one of my colleagues, Mike Lucini, put together the interconnection application process to get that going, so we wouldn't have to wait that 2 years once we got here. So that application's ready to go. When National Grid comes back to me with an interconnection service agreement, a formal agreement, I have only 30 days to execute, which requires a sizable deposit. So in order to do that, I have to have the site agreement in place.
Again, this agreement, that letter of intent, does not commit the town to anything at this point. We still have to work the lease, go through there, and if something blows up and that, the whole deal goes away. So we're not committing to anything. We're not going to be on the hook for anything. This is simply authorization to say, move it to the next level without any, again, none of this has any cost to the town.
So the LOI is not voting on the proposed?
No, it is not. It is simply voting to authorize signing that. That's it. Nothing else. They will come back. Actually, Mr. Marchand will be coming back more than likely with the lease and finalizing that. Unless if I know this is going to go, then I can start working with Russ to at least get the basic terms in and done on the lease. Hopefully, have something ready so Ben can.
I just want to make it clear to the public that the council wouldn't vote on something before the legal.
Right. This is simply authorizing to move forward with the process. That's it. Not anything. Russ.
So, Russ, we've had some very preliminary meetings, you and I, with Mr. Wazika. When do you anticipate construction beginning? I expected, we were thinking late spring, early summer of 2022?
Yep.
Okay, so that being the case, Lisa's question earlier, she was asking about when the first public hearing would be. In order to do that, the first public hearing I would expect before the planning commission would probably be, it's all going to depend upon his engineers getting everything to our office. But Russ, I'm thinking October maybe?
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're ready to go. Yep.
Maybe okay.
Yep. We're just waiting for this part of the process to be formalized so we can move forward.
So that would be the first public hearing, and I would expect if the planning commission sought to grant approval of master plan is conceptual in nature. There's no hardcore engineering done. It's mostly the next step is preliminary. They'll have to get all their engineering done, get all their permits in place. I would expect to see you back again in maybe February or March.
Yeah.
For another public hearing. So that's the timeline I'm looking at, I'm thinking.
And then after that, we'd be good to go to construction.
You'd need final approval, but normally they request final being done administratively.
Yep.
Basically, final is just making sure you've got all your I's dotted, your T's crossed. You would not have to appear back before the commission if the commission granted myself the authority to approve it administratively. 9 times out of 10, they usually do that. So myself and the town engineer would do the review and we'd make sure you had everything in place. It would have to go back after that. It's going to have to go back before the council again because the council is going to be the authority that approves the decommissioning bond.
Okay.
So some point in time after preliminary, prior to final, you're going to have to go appear before the council again for your decommissioning bond.
Okay. Yep.
Any other questions?
The direct abutters who are concerned about glare, when would that be addressed? When would that study be completed? At what point?
We can start on that as soon as the LOI is in place. And it doesn't take long to get those back.
And in your experience with other projects, have any direct abutters had issues with decrease in value due to the solar projects?
I think that would be site specific, depending on the solar array that you happen to be near and how it affects the surrounding area. Yeah.
I mean, ours is direct, GZA, the engineering would sit in our parking lot to monitor the project, so it's pretty visible. they'll be sitting there, we'll talk to them, and so I mean, it's clearly.
And we are engaging with GZA as well for our engineering as well, just to keep it, the continuity there.
Who are you handing the project off to when you depart from
So
Sunday?
this will go to the town manager. Along with the other things I'm working on, and to get a hold of it. And he'll have all the paperwork, he's got everything. Again, I'd like to get it as complete as possible on this before I do leave the tech, which is in 3 weeks for apply. So I'll make it as much time as possible, but then it'll be taken over.
Thank you.
What would you estimate generation concerns would be available, like engineering?
Engineering plans?
The generation plans of how much it's going to be dumping into our system and that kind of thing.
You mean kilowatt hours?
Yes.
Oh, I can get that as soon.
Is our system going to be able to handle all this?
So that's part of the interconnection process. I had to go through that's what took what was it, a year and a half? It took a year and a half to get this interconnected. I'll tell you a quick little story. You go down to that site, I think everyone's familiar with it. It's down by the center of New England. There's literally, we need what's called 3-phase power. That's when you see the top of the utility lines, there's 3 lines. We need 3-phase power. There's 3-phase power encircling that entire landfill, but we can't connect to those. Those go back to Hopkins Hill substation. That substation is too full. It's got too much on it from a renewable energy standpoint. It services West Greenwich. So there's actually a line going down New London Ave that we're going to tap into. And again, this is one of the hurry up things that we have to do to make sure that we can.
Dump right into our local system.
It goes onto National Grid's distribution lines, right? So the electricity is going to flow up there, and if you want to follow the electrons, any house or business tapped off of those lines could be using that electricity. National Grid studies it on a worst case scenario basis. If none of that power gets used, then it goes all the way back to the substation. Can the substation handle that power coming back into it? So those studies are all complete, and that's what we have in our hands. And now National Grid, everything they do is by statute. They're regulated by the PUC, and they follow it by the book. So now they hand me an interconnection service agreement. They say, you owe this to get it going. So there's a big deposit that needs to be paid in the next couple of weeks.
I was going to check before I asked once, we had no one at that time. One more time for anybody out there on Zoom land. If you would like to ask a question, we'll attempt to see if we can get you in. Please simply raise your hand. I'll do this one final time, like I used to in the council. We've got one. All right. See if this is going to work now. Josh, can you hear us? Josh, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Darn, it worked. Excellent.
Great. I was really just raising a hand to make sure it worked for you, Ed. But no, I appreciate the opportunity, the forum here. I think this is an awesome project. I think it's great work. Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Going once. Does anyone want to have another question? Going twice. Anyone with a question, please raise your hand. And for my final time, third time, does anyone have a question? Mr. Council Member, we have no questions other than Josh's. Russ? Ladies and gentlemen, do we have any other questions that you guys involved in ask?
Ed, no, I just wanted to say, I'm gonna leave my cards up here. I'm District 4 Councilwoman, and I represent this entire area. So for those of you who are here who live near this and would like to get in touch with me and have any questions you might think of after the fact, or want to chat with me more about this, my business cards are right over there on the stage with my cell phone number and email. So please use that and get in touch with me.
Anyone else?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When the fire was mentioned, it struck a chord. What happens if there is a situation? Does Coventry Fire and Police Department have to share in the cost responsibility to remedy the problem?
Well, if there's a fire just like now, any property that fire the police go to, I mean, that cost comes out of the town. So this piece of property would be no different from that. Except for, you have the added concern of Lomanto itself.
Right.
I've looked around, I haven't seen any, one of the upsides on this is the electronics and mechanics are all down away from the site itself. So if by some chance, and off chance that there was ever anything, it would be down and below. But yeah, they would respond to any other problem.
As part of the town zoning process, the project has to meet with the fire marshal of record. I don't know who that is in this instance. I'm not sure if you do, Ed, but whoever is in charge of this area, we meet with them and they survey the site, they review our plans, and they make comments where needed for access for emergency vehicles.
Is it taxed by the fire district as well?
I'm sorry?
Are you taxed by the fire district as well?
Is it what?
Is it taxed by the fire district?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Nothing I'm aware of either. Yes, sir.
I came a little late, so I don't know sure we had gone through this. How is the framework going to be secured to the landfill?
It's just the back, right there. These are landscape blocks right in the front.
So
That holds everything down?
yep, right. So they're screwed to racking. The panels are attached to racking, and the racking has a tray, and there's typically like a ballast block or some kind of weight like you see there. And as I mentioned a couple of times, it's all dependent upon the characteristics of the site, what kind of wind it sees, how big
So if you feel there is a wind issue in the future, you can add to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a complicated engineering. They're pretty sure it's not going anywhere unless you're, 200-mile hurricane wind type of thing. I mean, it's fairly weighted down.
Yeah, because they're fairly lightweight anyways, aren't they?
What's that?
Panels are fairly lightweight, aren't
Yes, yeah, the panel weighs about 40 pounds.
I don't know if you were here when I mentioned it earlier. We have the same type of system up on this building.
they? Yes, that's actually.
Yeah, so I mean, even with all the storms, the severe wind situations we've never had a single one of those lift up and stop.
I didn't know if they would have to start drilling through.
They can't, that's
Is that
one
green?
weakness.
Well, like, I saw the rubber mat, it looked like.
Yeah, you can't go through that,
Yeah, that's right, I was wondering how.
Yep.
Have you ever had a situation where the rubber mat, with the heat that those things produce, the rubber mat start on fire?
No,
No, you never had that?
not that I'm aware of, no.
Does anyone know what fire district that is?
That should be central.
Fire district is?
Like a Chief Brown. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Council?
I just want to thank Lisa, for
Thank you.
and everybody who came to this forum. Really appreciate the comments and questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation today. I know it's important to stay out there. I'm glad you showed up. At least it was worthwhile. I'm doing this, but I will be answering questions for you. Any other feel free to contact me next 3 weeks and I'll answer any questions.
Yeah.